Hey there, Griff Hamlin here. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. In this video, I want to talk probably more towards the beginning students, but I actually want to talk about terms. There's a lot of terms that get thrown around. We talk about things like licks and chops and bar chords and movable chords and all these different kinds of things. And so I wanted to kind of sort of, give you a level playing field. Sometimes, you don't even know what you don't know. You don't know what to go looking for. And sometimes it's hard to know what's a blues riff or what's a blues lick, right? And what are the differences and how would you know sort of what you're looking for? So the first term that I want to talk about is a lick, right? A blues lick. We talk about people, stealing their licks or learning their licks or any of this kind of stuff. And really a lick is any kind of blues soloing idea. At least this is my opinion. And of course, I'm sure other people may have slightly different opinions on some of these definitions. But at least in my experience over the last 25, 30 years playing gigs and talking to people, these are the way these terms seem to be universally understood, right? So in general, a lick could be anything, even simple, but any kind of lead playing element like that, where you're playing single notes or maybe double stops. Right, anything anything like that where you're playing single notes in a lead type of situation. The band's doing some chords or whatever, you're playing over top of it. Kind of going along with licks, you might hear it said that somebody's got chops, or, my chops are rusty, or, that guy's got some really cool licks because he's got some great chops, right? So what do we mean by that? Well, typically it has to do with speed. So that is a faster lick. It's going to require that you move your fingers faster. It's going to require that you have a little bit more speed available. And typically we refer to that as somebody's chops, right? If your chops are rusty, you're playing a little bit slower, you're struggling a little bit. If you've got killer chops, right, you can play stuff that's really, really fast, and you can play a lot of it and really, really put a lot out. That may or may not be a good thing, right? Some people dig that, some people don't. I'm not here to judge that one way or the other. I'm just trying to help you know which is which, right? Now, the term I think that gets the most confusion of all is riff, okay? And I have always understood the word riff to be sort of an abbreviation for a rhythm figure. And so a rhythm figure is the way you play some chords, right? So you might have a blues in A, right, which would be a bar of A, a bar of D, a couple of bars of A, a bar of D, etc. But there's a lot of different ways I can play that, okay? I could play something very simple, but that's probably not what I would do. Instead, I might play something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and... And don't worry if that doesn't make perfect sense to you. You don't necessarily have to be able to play that. But notice that that is a certain rhythmic idea, a way that I'm strumming. Now, some people might call this a strumming pattern, okay? But it might be that my riff or my rhythm figure is something like with single notes. Right? So I'm playing this same group of several notes together, but I'm never really strumming. So to me, a strumming pattern doesn't really make sense because I'm not necessarily strumming. Okay. Now sometimes if I play a blues, I might be strumming, right? I might play just some open, something simple. Okay, but in that case, you might call it a strumming pattern, but it's still a rhythm figure. Rhythm figure is sort of the fancy musical term for that. It's the series of quarter notes and eighth notes and rests and whatever, whatever that is that's put together, that same idea gets put on a different chord and on a different chord. So the chord changes, but the rhythm doesn't change. So that's a rhythm figure, or the way I like to call it is a riff. Okay, and again, a riff could be, something considerably more interesting. Right, something like that, or you might even call something like this. You might call that a riff, because I could move it to a C. So that could conceivably be a riff, but I don't know that that one's kind of a gray area, I suppose. But hopefully you get the idea of what that's all about. Now, one other thing that causes a lot of beginners some trouble is that we talk about bar chords a lot. And I want to sort of make clear that a bar is a technique. Anytime I'm going to put one finger across several strings, that's a bar, right? So we have chords that utilize a bar, okay? A G7, for example, or, A major, A minor 7. There's a lot of chords that utilize a bar, but they don't all look like that. For example, I could play, this is an F major 7, and I'm barring across those top 3 strings. So that's got a bar in it, but it's not really what you think of as a traditional bar chord, okay? I also have chords like this one. Okay, this is D7 sharp 9. If it's E7 sharp 9, you probably recognize it as like Jimi Hendrix. And it's a chord that we use fairly often, but there's no bar in it. Yet it's still movable, meaning that the same shape can, like this is C7 sharp 9, C sharp 7 sharp 9, D 7 sharp 9, right? Depending on where I put it, changes the root note, but not the type of chord. Or I might have a major 7 chord like this. There's no bar involved, but it's still movable. Okay? Same with this one. There's no bar involved, but it's still quite movable. Or a 7th chord. So there are actually a lot of different chord shapes that, while they are movable, you can move them around, they don't have a bar in them. So don't get confused. Like if people talk about, oh, do you know your bar chords? A lot of times what they mean is, do you know any movable chord shapes? Movable chord shapes are super useful. And yes, many of them do have a bar, but not all of them. So I want you to be clear that there is a subtle difference between a movable chord shape and a bar chord shape. All right, so off the top of my head and with a little bit of planning, that's all of the different terms that's the stuff that I see on a regular basis that causes confusion. If there's any other terms, what I'm going to do is I'll put this video on my blog, leave some comments below the video, or if it's on YouTube, comments below the YouTube. Let me know if there's other terms that you need to know defined, because I'm more than happy to add to the list as we go, right? I can absolutely add another video to this to do more terms. But I know for beginners, a lot of times it's tricky, because you think, I want to learn how to play something, but you don't know what to call it. Or you need to know a thing, but you don't know what to search for. You don't know what to look for. You just don't know what you don't know yet. So hopefully this video has been a little bit useful to you. If you did get something out of it, feel free to share it with a friend. And I hope to see you again real soon. Take care.